All right, we're at Lazy Acres here in Marianna, Florida. Have you ever wondered how a small regenerative farmer raises beef, pork, chicken, and sends it to a farmer's market? We're gonna cover it on today's tour with Ryan. It's gonna be great.
And so eventually cows came into that mix. And when Hurricane Michael happened, a lot of those things went away just because structurally the farm was so devastated. But backing up a little bit, in 2014, we had enough friends and family and people coming out to the farm. We had cleaned up enough of the pine trees as they were being cut down. We were putting everything into pasture. So we were selling enough, half pig, quarter pig, full pig, chickens, those type things, that all of a sudden people were like, hey, I want 2 of these or 4 of those. And so we began to pencil it all out. We were like, I think we can make a living doing this.
Okay, yeah.
And so I left my full-time job in town in 2014 and came to the farm. And up until very recently, that's all I've done. After Hurricane Michael, I did drive a forklift at the sawmill in Cypress for a year. So I tell people I have an interesting skill set. I can work through a very complicated Excel spreadsheet, and I have a forklift driving license.
There you go. Certified forklift operator.
So anyway, but I work at an accounting office now 2 days a week in town. And mostly because the boys are getting older, we have scaled back on chickens, we've scaled back on hogs. We've got more cows than we've ever had. But yeah, we've kind of made some changes that have been beneficial,
Yeah, that's cool that it was not so much as like a business venture, it was like a lifestyle change, and then it became a business venture.
Right.
That's neat, okay. Yeah, I just told her.
Thank you for the reminder.
They learn pretty quick just to do that because that's where the lush stuff is. I mean, they'll eat that right there, but it's bitter.
Oh, really?
And so they don't really like that. But they will eat it when it's young like that. Now, like these dandelions like this, that's like prime grazing right there. I mean, it's tender, it's good, they like it. And so they know, don't come out here and lollygag and start looking for the perimeter and all that. They know, hey, we go through this gate, we're eating.
This is the salad bar, we got the good stuff.
Right.
Yeah, we got the little guys coming up. Oh, look at the little one.
Oh, they're tiny.
Yeah, there should be 8 of those.
Okay.
They're not all gonna come. I'm gonna leave this gate open. I'll
Yeah.
leave a water trough on in there. And this evening I'll come back out and make double sure.
I got you.
All right, so that one right there is crazy.
Really?
That heifer right there is crazy.
Oh my goodness. Okay, this brown one, Allie, can you get the yellow thing in his nose? You're trying to get him to stop nursing, right?
We want him to wean.
Okay, yeah.
It doesn't prevent him from grazing. It doesn't, or her in this case, from grazing. But in that one's case, the mama is pregnant.
Oh, okay.
And so that calf weighs 300 to 350 pounds, give or take. And that's a lot on her, especially in this heat. And so the wean rings, and I've got some up there, I can show them to you up close. But the wean rings, they slide in the nose. They have a little wing nut that tightens it down. It moves freely. It doesn't hurt them. It's smooth plastic, but it has some little points on it. and there again, they're soft plastic,
Oh, yeah.
but you know, it's so when they try to nurse, it bumps into the mama's udders, and she's like, you know, that's enough of that, you know. Happens, you know. We try to let them stay in there 4 weeks, and you know, give or take. So quick little story about this big cow that just lifted up and is coming our way. That's Penny.
Okay.
Penny is a great mama, okay, and super gentle. We could walk over there and pet Penny.
Oh.
But Penny, if Penny had a cell phone or car keys or anything like that, she would lose them. Okay, and so for the first week or so after having a calf, she loses them.
Oh no.
Just loses
How do you
them.
lose them?
And so when she was a
Wandered
heifer,
off.
she did that. I mean, like, just couldn't find it, walked around out here moping around,
Oh.
you know, and just it's like, all right, well, where's this calf? Well, we ended up finding the calf,
Yeah.
you know, and we it was still small enough. We, you know, picked it up and we carried it to her, you know, and we thought, wow, she's a first calf heifer. She'll grow out of that.
Yeah.
All right. But the second calf comes along, same deal. She'd go bed it down somewhere and she'd just go eat, you know, and
Forget about
30 minutes later, an hour later, 6 hours later, she's over here mooing, just miserable because
Where's my kid?
her udders are full, and she's like, I just don't know where he's at.
You know, I didn't think about that. I mean, the stress of losing the calf, but also it's like, I gotta milk.
Yeah. And so, you know, second one comes along, third one comes along, fourth one comes along, fifth one. This is her fifth or sixth one. This is her fifth one.
Okay.
And so she had the calf. She had the calf actually in that pasture up there where that big tank is.
Okay.
And we got ready to move, and I moved everybody down into this pasture. Well, here she comes, moves, and I looked at her, and I'm like, "You've had a calf. You're not pregnant anymore, you know." And so, where's your calf? Where's your calf? And she just walks right on by. She's end of the day. I came out here, you know, and I'm just standing up there in the shade listening, and every now and then I hear this, man, Mom, and it's like, all right, Penny. So I went and got my flag, and I went and got her, and I'm like, okay, let's go. You know, and I walk her back up there.
Yeah.
Through the gate, she walks in, and I know because I can hear the calf's over here. I know that's where it's at. I don't know exactly where it's at, but I can hear it. And so she starts walking, gets up to the top of the hill, and heads over this way. And I'm like, where are you going?
Your kid's this way.
So-
Come on, Penny.
So I finally got her back to the calf. The next day, or 2 days, whatever it was, we moved from that pasture to this pasture. And again, she comes right through the gate,
Yeah.
you know, happy-go-lucky. And I'm like, where's your calf? Where's your calf? Well, at the end of the day, she's standing down here at the gate.
Oh, God.
I know I've got something to do, but I can't remember what it is.
I think I left something in here.
And so
Don't quite remember what.
I videoed all that. And of course, that was prior to my Starlink coming in. So I'm hoping to be able to start uploading some of that content.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
This is the first calf heifer right here. We changed her tag out to a yellow tag just because we had her in the corral.
Oh, really? Okay.
She's got a birthmark on her nose though, right there,
Oh.
and just a white hair ring around her nose there.
Oh, okay. I see it. Yeah.
So we thought that was pretty.
I didn't know cows can get birthmarks.
So this little bull right here was not meant to be a little bull.
Really?
So you talked about Sindel Farms. Meg Austin from Sindel is our vet,
Oh, no way.
and so that is Penny. Hey, babe,
Hey, Penny.
you gonna walk away from me?
Oh, she's like, nope.
Yeah, Penny was in the corral. We had a deal at the farm to table dinner. We had her in the corral. It was here at that time.
Okay.
She was the show cow, and
She's a
Dylan
pretty cow.
Dylan didn't let her out. So I said, I'll go do it. About 10:30 at night. And I spooked her when I went in there. And she bucked and then rolled up against me and pinned me against the corral fence.
Oof. Oh, you got a turkey too.
Yeah. She had a mate. The mate got caught by something.
Oh no.
So they'll stay here for a few days. And I'll take the tractor and I'll mow a round out there so we can put the fence down.
Okay.
And then we just move them. You know, we've tried so many different ways to keep them behind the cows, which is what the Salatin style would be, to migrate the chickens behind the cows. And we're just not there yet. I mean, our structure is not there, our infrastructure is not there. I've tried 3 different electric fence chargers that are solar.
Okay.
And they're all just garbage.
Not ideal.
They work 3 months and then they quit. And so anyway, it's just always a handle. But
so do y'all sell the eggs in the farm store?
yeah,
Or at the farmers
I don't
markets?
have any. At the farmers market we do, and we do have a few egg customers here.
Nice. Okay.
And so that's been a good thing.
That's cool. Yeah, we were talking earlier. That is like just like the Joel Salatin chicken house.
And so we modified it a little bit.
Okay.
We use a tarp on top of it instead of a metal roof.
Mm-hmm.
Something that we noticed and our heat is different than their heat. I know they get hot, but it's just different. And so when we used metal roofs on those, it just stayed so punishingly hot in there.
Yeah.
So we actually get a tarp. Harbor Freight used to have the best tarps ever. I mean, they were like $4 and they lasted, but something's changed since the pandemic and they're not good anymore. But we would put the tarp on there, and we've got bungee cords on the side that we bungee it onto, and the wind would pick it up and it would create almost like a bellow, like a what's the word I'm looking for?
Like a tent?
Yeah, like a tent, but it pumps. I mean, it moves air.
Yeah.
And
The air wouldn't stagnate
right.
under there.
And so
That's nice.
So once we did that, we lost almost none of them.
Nice.
to
Okay.
Heat during the summertime, or early summer. Now this time of the year, the Cornish crosses, you would lose some as hot
Really?
as it is. The egg box is open right now. Somebody, I guess Kelly, when she got eggs, she must have left it open. But yeah, it's just simple. I mean, there's nothing fancy about it. It's completely nasty inside. Chickens are the nastiest animals. I see all these Pinterest, chicken coops and everything, and I just think to myself, you realize about 4 minutes after that chicken is in there, there's gonna be crap everywhere inside that thing.
Please send us a before and after.
Yes.
Before chickens were in it and after
Yeah,
chickens were in it.
these reading areas where the kids have a little reading bench and chicken coop, and I'm like, oh, you just don't know.
It looks good on paper, but in
Yeah,
practice.
it's fun until they poop everywhere.
Yeah. That's so funny. That's cool though.
Now this pasture, we ran 600 meat birds on this.
Okay.
We started down there, we came across here, over, back across. And so they almost made the lap over twice.
Oh, nice.
And so we ended up butchering them when they were, well, you see where they ended. They stopped right there. That far one is in the high weeds, and then this one right here. So that's where they stopped.
Okay.
But
That's a lot of chickens. 600.
It's a lot, and it's a lot of poop on the ground. I mean, when you look at these pastures, I mean, this is ready to be grazed. It should have been grazed by now, but I've just, I got more grass than cows, which is a wonderful problem to have.
Oh yeah. I'm sure grazing cows are a lot easier than chickens.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to move all this stuff.
Yeah, we've gotten it down to a science. I mean,
Really?
we've gotten it down. We each have a job, and if Nathan is here and Kelly and I are here, we can move them completely in about 45 minutes.
Okay.
So it's not an all-day deal.
That's doable. That's nice.
And that's
pretty quick.
something with the farm that we had to get in our head. If the chores are taking 3 and 4 hours every day, they're not chores.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a drudgery, you know. And so raising boys on the farm, we had to figure out a way to make things concise. And raising boys on the farm, we had to figure out a way to help the boys make decisions. I'm a decision maker, and I realized when the boys were 12 or 13 years old that I was making too many decisions because they were great worker bees. I mean, the boys would work themselves, you know, they just knew how to do it. But if you had to come out here and, oh, how do we, you know, what's our plan for this? Well, if Dad tells us what the plan is, we'll kill it, you know.
Yeah.
And so I realized that at some point, and then I started backing off and being like, all right, tell me how you're going to do this. What's your plan? And so one of the things we instituted, and we did it for two reasons. One, for them to make decisions, and two, we wanted them to start putting tools back in the toolbox and in the barn. But if you can do it in 2 minutes or less, do it now. If it takes longer than 2 minutes, plan it, work the plan. And so one of the reasons we did that was so they would look at, can I do this in 2 minutes? Is if I can't, then how do I approach this, you know?
Yeah.
So it's real simple, it's real quaint, nice and cool.
Oh, it's very nice and cool. Nice. Got a bunch of spices, all right.
Yeah, Green Gate, Olive Grove. Let's see. I don't know if those things work or not, but we've got one. Supposed to make pests go away, I don't know.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if it actually work, but.
So I assume you've got the pork, chicken, or pork, chicken, beef in the freezers?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And so right now I don't have a lot of pork at all. That's something we didn't even look at. We didn't look at says we're in Lulu.
Oh yeah.
Up on the hill. We can go back up there if you'd like later.
Sure.
But right now, primarily chickens and beef.
Okay.
And so like this is chickens.
Chickens.
And so these are the 3-ish to 4-ish pounders.
Okay.
And we've got 4s and 5s in there, and I've got a handful of 6s and lots of beef in here. And
Do you butcher these yourself, or you send them somewhere?
we do.
You do? Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're in the process. We built an area that's open air in the back, and have the 3-base sink, have a hand wash sink. We've got a stainless steel table. Complied with all the stuff, but they changed that. I think it was last year, where open air is no longer
Really?
accepted in Florida.
Oh, okay.
And so, you know, so I've got a trailer back there, enclosed trailer, that I'm gonna actually close in. I'm gonna put a mini split in it. And you know, we got thinking about it. The older that we get, and the boys moving on, you know, it might actually be a really good side business.
Oh yeah.
Everybody's raising chickens.
Some mobile butchery? That's a great idea.
You know, but nobody necessarily has a plucker or a scalder or the kill cones or. I mean, that's a lot of infrastructure.
Yeah.
If you buy a plucker, you're $800-900, $1,000 into it. Well, at some point, if you're just butchering chickens, does that make a lot of sense? You know, and then
true,
who wants to hand pluck a chicken? We did. I mean, and I can tell you, when we got done with that first batch, Kelly was like, well, I'll have a plucker or we won't do this again.
Yeah.
You start to immediately regret having chickens.
Yeah.
There's so much work.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, we, the metal on the walls and the ceiling came from Mr. Horton's barn. Kelly's dad, Hurricane Michael, blew the roof off of his barn, and we trudged out into the woods and salvaged what we could.
There you go, yeah.
And so it ended up being utilized for this.
I had to do a first in-person interview. I'm a little nervous. Can you tell? Ryan, thanks for having us, man.
Thank you guys for coming out.
Yeah, so again, we were just talking, I've done over 200 episodes of the first in-person one, so it's kind of nice not to have to rely on the internet.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're in the farm store at Lazy Acres. How long have y'all had this farm store right here?
So we started building the farm store in 2018.
Okay.
And we had the majority of it done, and Hurricane Michael happened. And so we actually finished and opened officially June the 1st, 2019.
Nice. Okay.
So a little while.
A little while. And you've got chicken, beef, pork, which we saw a little bit earlier. You said you cut back on the pork, right? Because you've got your kids are going off to college.
Yeah, we're sort of in a transition point. You know, our boys, they're 18, 19, and 22.
Yeah.
And our 22-year-old is married. Our 19-year-old has finished trade school, has joined the Navy, and or is in the process of finishing trade school. He'll be finished soon and then leaving for the Navy. Our 18-year-old is working full-time at the peanut mill in Bascom, and in January he leaves to go to North Georgia to college. So my wife and I aren't getting any younger. Pastured pigs is a little bit of a labor-intensive endeavor, and so we knew that with the boys moving on, that was going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
The other thing that happened during COVID with supply chain issues and, you know, just the difficulty of getting things, inflation, at one point pig feed was costing about 3 times what it had previously cost.
Ooh.
And so it became pretty cost prohibitive to raise pigs. And so we still have Sizzler, our boar, and we have a sow in with, they're together right now, as a matter of fact. So we haven't completely shut down on pigs, but we've just significantly reduced, you know, what we have. Our consistency with pork will be a little bit inconsistent, if you will, simply because we just don't have the number of animals that we used to have.
So speaking of COVID, I love chatting with people about this, not in COVID in particular, but were y'all doing farmers markets before or after COVID?
We were. And, you know, I want to be careful what I say. I don't want to get your podcast blacklisted or dinged or anything, but I knew there was something up, all right? When we got the notification that the farmers markets were shutting down, the roadside stands had to shut down. If you have a farm store on your farm, you have to shut down. But the large grocery stores are wide open. And for me, it just didn't connect. It was just this doesn't make sense. Why would it be that way? And the problem was, the frustrating thing for me is I'm analytical and I like to ask questions and I like to learn, but you couldn't ask questions. If you did, you were told, hey, that's not what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And so that for me was very, very frustrating. But we were shut down, I guess mid-March is when it began to happen. Of 2020, so we were shut down the whole end of March, April, May. I don't know exactly when we started back. Sometime in June or July, I would guess. I'd have to look back to tell you the exact start date, but it was really frustrating. Yeah.
So how did y'all manage? Because it's not like you can just tell the cows to stop growing, the chickens to stop growing. So how did you manage all that during COVID?
So we were in the process of, we had a website and we had an online store. Okay. And it was a little bit clunky, okay? We were in the process of transitioning to a different online store that was a much more streamlined. It's what we're using today. And so we had an August, I believe it was August 15th was the date that we were shooting to launch. And that was prior to COVID even being a thing, okay?
Yeah.
Nobody knew COVID was a thing. And so we were in the transition point of migrating from our old website to our new website. We were still writing the content. What's it going to say? What's it going to look like? What are the colors going to be? You know, that form and function of it. And then COVID happened. And so the web company that we were working with, the online company, you know, we called them up and we said, hey, whatever we got to do, it may not have all the bells and whistles. Yeah. We just need a bell and a
Please
whistle.
Push it out right now. Yeah.
And so the website initially went out to be able to sell sometime in July, I believe. So we were a full month and a half earlier than we intended to be. And we, you know, like everything, we had some bumps in the road. We had some, you know, curves that we had to figure out
Yeah.
But so that was a saving grace, because a lot of the small farms like ours, you don't qualify for an SBA loan because you're a farm. Well, because of the size and the scale and what we do, and when you've got multiple animals, and when you go over to the FSA, the Farm Service Agency, they were like, well, you need to go to the SBA. You're not really what we're set up to deal with. And so we kind of were in that unique position where what do we do? And so basically we just sort of squared our shoulders back and said, you know what? We're here and it's us and we're going to do this, and so what has not been an easy thing. It's been a challenge.
Well, I mean, it seems like you guys have been, since then kind of thriving, because y'all are super popular at farmers markets, like the farm store online and everything. I'm sure that was eased all the apprehension and worry you had during the pandemic.
Sure. And the, everything is a matter of degree, I guess. But when you go from being very comfortable with your inventory and being very comfortable with the pace that your inventory leaves, and the pace that you restock your inventory, okay? When all of a sudden people are lined up out there and they're buying you out. I mean, we literally went from our average sale prior to COVID, I believe I could go back and tell you exactly, but it was like $27 a customer.
Nice. Okay.
So our average sale was like $27. Well, during the COVID hysteria, it was $65. And so because people just knew there's never going to be any more ground beef, there's never going to be another dozen eggs, there's never going to be another whole chicken. And so we're telling them the whole time, do you really need 20 pounds of ground beef? There's two of you, come on.
Yeah.
And so I had a guy call me, and he's like, man, I need 100 pounds of ground beef. Well, at the time, I didn't have 100 pounds of ground beef. I literally did not have 100 pounds of ground beef on the farm, and I was like, I don't have it. He got aggravated with me, and I was like, why do you need 100 pounds of ground beef? Let's think this through for a minute. So I talked him off the ledge. He came and got like 10 pounds of ground beef, and he became a regular customer.
Nice. Okay.
Over time.
Yeah.
But, I tried to explain to him, man, we're just not set up for that. The vast majority of small farms that you're going to shop with are not set up for that.
Yeah.
And so take a deep breath. The world's not coming to an end. As long as the sun shines and rains falls, we're going to grow food. Okay.
Yeah.
So, step back away from the ledge, and you can get by with 5 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever.
You don't need 100 pounds.
You don't need
every
100
time.
pounds of ground beef. That's not what you need to do. But people went into that mode, that frenzy mode. And so what it created for us was a frenzy of, how do we do this? You couldn't get into the butcher. Of course, we have butcher dates, but even with those, the inspectors were working half schedules. And so you couldn't, it wasn't that, even if you had a butcher date, it didn't matter. You might not be able to get in there. And so that made it a challenge for sure. And when you work really, really, really hard and you restock all the freezers, and 48 hours after that, they're all empty again. It's like,
it's a good thing, but a bad thing also.
It's a good thing, but it's a scary thing, because now you're like, well, now I'm spending all day long telling people I don't have.
Yeah.
And in business, you don't want to do that.
Nope.
You never, ever want to tell people.
Because then they go somewhere else, right? Yeah.
And they go somewhere else forever, And so, or at least that's the devil on your shoulder.
Yeah. They're never going to come back.
Never going to come back to you. You're done, And so it was a really challenging time, and it still is. We still deal with inventory.
I bet, yeah.
If the entire cow could be ribeye steaks, if the entire pig could be bacon, it'd be a perfect world. But the reality is, when we carry a cow to the butcher, they weigh live weight about 1,100 pounds. We end up with 24-ish ribeye steaks out of that. A 260-pound hog live weight is going to give us about 18 pounds of bacon.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not this. We don't get 500 pounds of bacon out of a 600-pound hog. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And so, boy, I wish it did. But
that's true. And I heard a lot of people during COVID. A lot of people send me articles, and they're like, "Well, can't you see? Like, we have a beef shortage. But we didn't have a beef shortage. It was a bottleneck on the supply chain because there's so much like that we can process at a time, and people are panic buying. So they're, oh, we don't have enough beef. We need to buy all the beef. We don't have any beef, but we do. It was the bottleneck that we were facing.
The processing bottleneck was the real issue, and people began to realize that our food system was fragile for the first time in a long time. People like my family that decided many years ago we're going to grow our own food because it's fragile. The system, well, wholesale, broad spectrum, people began to realize that it might not be as secure as we once thought it was. And part of that is, you've got, say, 10 or 11 facilities, 12 facilities across the entire country that employ thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and they process 85% of the beef or the pork or whatever, And so if you had 1,000 workers, well, if you've got all 1,000 of those at one place, if something happens at that one place, well, that's a bottleneck. If you've got 50 of those at 20 places, well, if 2 of them go offline, who cares? We've got 18 of them running full blast. We work an extra shift at the 18th one, and we catch up, But that's not the way our food system is built right now. And it does add a lot of uncertainty when we have an issue, commercial agriculture, industrial agriculture, if you will. It works great as long as fertilizer's cheap. It works great as long as fuel is cheap. It works great as long as there's not a hiccup in the system. But the moment that you can't get fertilizer, or you can't get seed, or you can't, whatever, we've dealt with in the last 3 years. Well, now all of a sudden it creates some problems. And I think people for the first time in a long time are beginning to see that, this is fragile.
Oh yeah, even with like the war in Ukraine, I mean, fertilizer costs skyrocketed, didn't they?
Oh yeah.
So what do you think? Would you consider yourself a regenerative farmer?
We are a regenerative farmer. We do consider ourselves that, and when we say that, we try to mimic nature. Okay, so we've got a no-till grain drill that we invested a lot of money in. Okay. And so we no-till plant over our summer pastures, and we grow winter grazing in the fall and winter. We once we get things planted, we try not to till the soil up again. Okay. Yeah. And so, and I say it that way. I know that there's a school of thought out there that, you shouldn't be tilling up anything. Well, in a perfect world, yes. But we dealt with Hurricane Michael, and it destroyed all of the timber and all of the forest on the farm virtually. And so we had to clean all that up. And so when you clean that up, it's rough. And so we had to go in there and disc all that, level it. Then we planted grass. This pasture that we looked at with the chickens, the one we looked at with the cows, we won't till that up again. I mean, it's going to be that way, till the end of time. If I'm gone and somebody decides to till it up, I guess so. Yeah, there you go. But no, so we're a regenerative farm in that regard. We try to mimic nature. Nature doesn't leave things uncovered. You go in your yard and you take a shovel and you dig out a spot. In 6 weeks, there'll be something in that spot. I mean, it just happens that way. We move the cows every day. You guys got to witness part of that. That was cool. We waited a little long in the day to do it, and so they were like, it's a little warm. It was hot. They wanted to stay in the shade. And so, but normally we move the cows either really early in the morning, between 6 and 7 a.m. or 5 and 6 p.m. So they're not used to that. Was out of character for them. Some of them were really good and placated us in that. But anyway, we move the chickens. When we have meat birds, we move them twice a day. And they're in the Salatin style enclosures. They're 12 feet long, so they move 12 feet in the morning and they move 12 feet in the evening. Reduces all the odor, because chickens they're smelly. Yeah. They poop a lot, and so it reduces all of that because you're essentially giving them a brand new bed every day. Okay. And when we had pigs, we moved the pigs about every 4 to 6 weeks. At one time we had 150 pigs here. And so that's a lot of pigs. The benefit like I said, we've cut back on pigs, but the benefit of having 100, 150 pigs on a pasture and then moving them every, say, 6 weeks, those pastures now are lush and fertile. And so we've added cows because we've got more pasture for the cows. We had 6 pig paddocks that were roughly 30 acres total. And so, now we can put those cows in there, and I mean, the fences are already up, everything's there,
Yeah.
And so it's really been a neat way to use that land. If pigs are used properly, they can do a lot of good things.
So every time I talk with a regenerative farmer, I think about the words intentionality. Like the more intentional you are, you can have less inputs because you're paying attention to the grass, to the soil, to the pigs. So do you think, like, I don't know, what would you say to a farmer that maybe not is regenerative? Maybe they're on the fence. Like, what would you say to them to make them make that last step to going for regenerative?
Well, everybody's got to do what they know, and the hard part is if you've done it one way for a long, long time, and Dad did it that way, and Granddad did it that way, and so on, it becomes. I mean, somebody's got to break that trend. All right. And so we tell everybody, I mean, we're a 7th generation farm, but we're 1st generation farmers. Because, Mr. Neal, Kelly's granddad, he passed away in 1987. And so the succession plan at that point just sort of stopped. The cows went away, the row crop went away, pine trees were planted in most of the fields. And so we had the benefit of having farmland, but nobody really saying, this is the way you got to do this.
Right, yeah.
And so we looked at it from a couple of perspectives. One, we wanted to enhance the soil. The soil is the most important thing we've got. And so we wanted to improve the soil and enhance it. But at the same time, we didn't have a barrel of money. We didn't have this trust fund somewhere. So we had to do things that we could afford. And so the idea of tilling up an area, planting grass, and then putting $10,000 worth of fertilizer on top of it was laughable for us.
Yeah.
We looked at that like, nope, that's not happening. But, I can buy $300 worth of chickens. I can buy $600 worth of chickens, build a chicken enclosure, and drag those chickens up and down the pasture, and by the time they get to the end of it, I've put $15,000 worth of fertilizer on that pasture. Now, I didn't do it in one day, and I didn't do it, at one shot, but, I did compound those enterprises and stack them on that acre. The advantage to doing it that way is that I've got a freezer full of chickens that I can sell, and so I've got, significant inventory that'll help me pay the phone bill and the power bill, et cetera, in the future. And I'm improving my soil. And so I think it's certainly a different way to look at agriculture, and I think a lot of farms that would be resistant to regenerative farming, I don't know this is completely anecdotal, but I have a feeling that at some point in a conversation with them, they would tell you they have to feed the world. Because a lot of farms tell you that.
Yeah.
We don't believe that. That is not in my belief system at all. It's not my responsibility. It's not the role of my farm. And I know that's, people would look at that, oh, that's a pretty hard line to take. But first and foremost, I mean, I'm responsible for my family, feeding them really high quality, good food, then my community, and any given Saturday at the farmer's market, we have between 40 and 60 customers, pretty regularly at the farmer's market. And so those folks are who I'm responsible for, and the more small farms like Lazy Acres, and you could start naming them, Sindel Farms, you guys have been to, there's many, many small farms out there. The more small farms we get doing this regenerative ag approach, I think the better off we are, and the food is better. The quality of the food is better. I had a guy come yesterday, drove all the way up from Panama City, and hey man, do y'all have any ground beef? And I said, yeah, we've got ground beef. He was like, good, I'll be there in 20 minutes or whatever.
Nice, yeah.
He was coming up 2:31, and anyway, he had tried our ground beef, And he liked it. He was up in this area anyway, and he was like, you know, I bought beef from a grocery store, and I don't know what's different, but yours is different. You know, I'm like, well, here's some things that are different. And we talked about, you know, it dry aging for 2 weeks before it's processed into ground beef. We talked about it being on pasture. Cows are moving around, doing what cows do. They're grazing grass. We're not feeding grain.
Yeah.
And again, we didn't sit up on some high lofty point when we decided we weren't doing grain. It was financial. You know, everybody around here's doing grain, and when I started looking at the cost of a ton of, you know, good quality cow feed, I was like, I can't pencil that out and make it make sense.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And so I'm going to grow the best grass I can, and the cows will do the rest. And so we were very fortunate. We bought a fair number of cows. We had a bunch of cows. When I say a bunch, we had about 25. And so we ended up buying 25 cows. We doubled the size of our herd because there was a farm going. The gentleman was retiring. He was 92 years old. And
Time to retire. Yeah.
He was selling off some cattle, and his adult children, his daughters, they were like 66 and 69 years old. Okay. And so they were to a point where they were like, Dad, it's time. And so we ended up buying like 25 of their cows. Well, they were grass cows. He did not believe in feeding them. The mama cow can feed the calves better than I can, I heard him say that. And then the mama cows, well, if they're any kind of mama, they'll go out there and graze. And I mean, that was his attitude, you know, and I thought, you know, that's a pretty good attitude.
Yeah.
He had electric fences. We had electric fences. You know, hardy, durable cows. We bought 25 of them, and day one, they walked in here and they started grazing. I mean, they never went back to the barn going, hey, is that where the feed is?
Yeah.
They didn't know. They had no idea. And so part of that is breeding a group of cows that can do it. I mean, that are hardy on grass, you know. And ours are that.
So before you process them, are they still on grass, or do you do a grain finish? Or
We don't do any grain.
just
finish.
all grass. Okay.
Now we do occasionally, if it's really dry, or if we're in between that, you know, summer to winter time where we don't have a lot of grass, we will give them perennial peanut hay.
Gotcha. Okay.
And which is a kind of like southern alfalfa. And it's very nutritious. It digests well. You know, a lot of protein, a lot of calories. I mean, it's really good. The cows love it. I mean, they'll knock you down to get to it.
Yeah.
But that's typically what we feed. We just, you know, we did have a time. It's been a while back. We've had fairly good rain. We did have a time where we got super dry. I mean, we had a drought, and we did have to feed because, I mean, you know, we just had to. We had to buy hay in the summertime, and we had to supplement with feed because the hay didn't have enough protein in it. And again, we made that decision based on the body conditioning of our cows, based on, you know, what they looked like and how they were able to nurse and how their calves looked and that kind of thing. So we knew, but that's really that was more of a management survival decision.
Yeah, then in terms of just the diet.
That wasn't a day-to-day operational thing, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I like your point earlier about kind of like the farmers that want to feed the world. I feel like a lot of the opponents to regenerative farming that are farmers are usually like the big 1,000-acre like monocrops where they're, you know, like massive amounts of corn and soybeans and stuff. But like the same farmers are like, we need to decentralize food, so we don't really need to feed the world. And I like that point. Like, you as a farmer, you don't need to feed the world. You need to feed your family and the community. Like, that's awesome. And I think I always tell people, like, the shorter the food supply chain is, the better it's going to be for the consumer and the farmer. Because the farmer, you know your consumer, you're going to get a little bit more money. And the consumer, you're going to get better product and support a local business.
Yeah, and local is always better.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when you start looking at local, it's better on the cows. In our case, as a local farm, it's better on the cows, it's better on the environment, it's better on me as the farmer, it's better on the customer.
Yeah.
You know, I saw a USDA statistic the other day. I was on a web forum actually doing some research, and the average morsel of food travels about 1,700 miles now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I haven't traveled 1,700 miles. I mean, you know, as the farmer doesn't get to see that part of the country that their food is going to. You know? But 1,700 miles, that's a ton of diesel fuel. You know, that's a ton of resources, everybody talks about this, the global warming and the climate change, and they're all up in arms about cow farts and things like that. And it's just, for a small farm like me, I'm just perplexed by it. I look at it and I go, what in the world are y'all talking about? I got grass deep enough that you can't see over.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What are y'all talking about, And so I think about a small farm. Well, I don't emit any CO2. I mean, I got one tractor and one truck. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm emitting some CO2, but I've got all of the sequestration back into the soil through photosynthesis, through managed grazing, through all of those things. And my supply chain is little. I mean, I'm going to Panama City and back here, and I'm here, So I'm not traveling off to Texas or Wyoming or Washington to sell my product.
Yeah.
It's being sold right here. And so I think if we looked at it from that point of view, a lot of those arguments, especially the anti-animal arguments, a lot of those begin to lose, steam pretty quick.
Yeah, I can't remember if it's in the Netherlands or in Ireland, but to combat climate change, they were going to cull, I think, 200,000 cattle, but they're removing a natural process. Like your cows eating grass is a natural process. Right. So essentially they're like, this natural process isn't good enough, let's just remove it. Right. So, but yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and that it's in the Netherlands where that's happening. It's heartbreaking, I mean, there again, we would be one of those farms if that was happening here.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely heartbreaking that that's happening to those farms. But at the same time, they've allowed that nonsensical, there again, I don't want to get your podcast.
No, you're good.
But this green idea, it's just pointed in the wrong direction. We're renewable, sustainable energy. We didn't talk about this earlier, but my bachelor's degree is in electronic engineering.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And so back in the mid-90s, when I went to college and learned all about electricity and what it does and can't do and those things, we really didn't call it solar back then. We called it, the photovoltaic array. EVA was what it was called back then. But solar, everybody looked at solar and just thought, nah, that's never going to be. People that have a solar well like I do, people that have solar panels on their house, they want to run a water heater. Yeah. Okay, but it's never going to be, a real replacement for the grid.
Yeah.
Okay? Well, there's 1,000 acres of solar fields, 2 miles from this farm that they took farmland and made into solar, and it's heartbreaking to see that happen because the amount of CO2 that they're expelling to create that, to fix the CO2 is staggering. My farm would never, ever, ever emit that much CO2. In 2 lifetimes, you couldn't emit what they've emitted over there, cleaning that up, manufacturing, mining the materials for the solar. And it's just not a fantastic energy source. 50% of the time it doesn't work because it's dark.
Especially here in Florida when it rains half the time.
Every afternoon, we're the afternoon thunderstorm state. We're not the sunshine state. And so anyway, that's a tangent I got off on. I'm sorry. But
no, that's perfect.
It does make me wonder. Sometimes our messaging, I think we get so caught up in protecting our territory in agriculture that we forget we need to message differently. We need to talk to people about the benefits of this, not protect, I'm going to feed the world. No. Let's don't go from that point of view.
Yeah.
Let's look at it from how can we improve the overall environment. And so anyway.
It seems like you and even people like Joel Salatin, they're like animal agriculture and agriculture in general is part of the solution. Like, don't completely remove it. Here's if you are intentional about it with grazing, crop rotation, it can sequester so much more carbon than if you just removed it and then what it's giving off. So yeah, those are all really good points.
Oh yeah.
I like it. So you guys are super active, obviously here at the farm store. You go to the Panama City Farmers Market. You go to any other farmer markets around here?
Not right now, and we have dabbled in different ones. We've done some pop-up markets. We've done other farmers markets. It's a real challenge at our scale to do more than one, just simply
Yeah.
because we run out of inventory. We were doing 2 markets a week for a while, and we just couldn't keep up. It was just we were on a treadmill, and that thing was getting faster and faster and faster.
Yeah.
And so we had to decide, okay, where are we going to put our energy? Where are we going to focus? And so we go to the Panama City Farmers Market, the downtown market, and we have the farm store here. We have an online store, and we deliver to Panama City Farmers Market
okay.
just about every Saturday.
Nice. Now, do you feel like you found your customer base? Because I've heard horror stories from people that either have a farm store, or they do farmers markets, or they deliver. So do you feel like doing all those 3 at your scale is pretty good for y'all?
I think so. Yesterday, I had a guy come in, and I mean, he walked through the door. I need 4 pounds of ground beef and a 6-pound chicken. I mean, that's specific. He was a return customer, and I love those people because I don't have to sell them anything. This is what I need.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of customers at the Panama City Market that are like that. They come up, hey, I need 2 chickens, 1 of these, 2 of those. It's easy to pull all that out of the freezer, ring it up, shake their hand, talk about their kids for a second or two, camaraderie with them, and then they move on. The next customer's there. The customer that's difficult is the one that wants, they've never eaten from a local farm. They've never eaten grass-finished beef. They want to ask you a million questions about what you do. Well, why is yours more expensive than it is at the grocery store? I don't understand that. And so they're not really a customer.
Yeah.
And so those are challenging, and they exist everywhere. And sometimes we win those folks over. Sometimes we don't. But I know that having the farm store has helped us over the years. Now, if you look at the sales at the farm store versus the farmer's market or the online sales, the farm store doesn't hold a candle to those. We're off the beaten path. I mean, you drove out here. You've got to be intentional to get to. Nothing is out here. It's us. And so you got to be coming here to get here. There's no other reason to be here. So, but if we get people here and we can walk around a little bit and we can look at cows and we can look at pigs and look at chickens and we can tell them our story, they end up becoming a customer more often than not.
That's awesome.
And they may become an online customer, but this helped them understand what we're doing and why we're doing it.
And speaking of like sharing your story, y'all just got Starlink. So are you going to be a little bit more active on the internet now?
That is our plan.
There you go.
We're about a week now, not quite a week into Starlink, and so we're excited about that. We've been binged watched a series on Amazon. It's one of the first times we've actually done that, and I was like, I don't know, I got to be careful with this.
Oh yeah, you can binge stuff for days.
I'll sit here and become a couch potato, and I got chores to do, But I guess when you don't have internet, you don't have a consistent. And we're rural, so it's always been inconsistent. To all of a sudden have something that just works.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like, oh my, that's
game changing.
Very interesting.
I mean, has Starlink been good for y'all so far? Like, what's your experience been like with it?
So far, and there again, we were used to a little hotspot.
Oh yeah.
From a wireless carrier, and we would get 4 or 5 megabits download speed, and it was about 50% of the time. I mean, it was just not consistent. The first day we had Starlink, we were at 180 megabits. Yeah. So it's just mind-numbing that this is what, we updated all our phones, and the iPad looked completely different the next day, and it's like, I don't even know what to do. Yeah. So yeah, it's been pretty cool. Yeah.
I bet it's so funny because I hear that pain point from every other farmer I talk to. They're like, we have no internet. I have to go in town to do it, or I have to get in the car. Did y'all have any sort of assistance when you tried to get Starlink from like the Florida Department of Agriculture or anything like that?
No, we were on the waiting list a little over 2 years.
Really? Okay.
And it was funny. The FedEx guy pulls up in the driveway, and he's got my Starlink box. And I know I was probably like, hey, and so
You go out there skipping, you're like, internet,
I'm sure that I was like, all right. And he said, yeah, you've been looking forward to this. And I was like, yes, sir, I have. I've been on the waiting list a little over 2 years. We chit-chatted about it.
Yeah.
He said, well, they must have, he said, I knew something had changed. He said, because this is probably the 12th one of these that I've delivered over the last 2 weeks.
No way.
And he said, so everybody in this little community is on Starlink.
Cool.
And I was like, well, that's neat, And so, yeah, everybody was in that same boat. They were willing to make the investment. They were willing to pay the monthly fee just to see.
Oh, yeah.
And like I say, so far, it's been great. It was super easy to install. And I'm relatively handy because on the farm you do things.
And electrical engineering, yeah.
And so installing it was, they thought of everything. They literally thought of everything.
Nice.
So it's well done. The app is well done. Sometimes you get things and you look at the app and you're like, what is this? But it works really well.
Have you seen the satellites go by at night?
I've not seen them. My neighbor did.
Really? Okay.
I have not. I guess we get up really early in the morning, and I'm usually in bed by 9:30.
Yeah,
so I guess I'm just not out there when they're out there. But I've seen pictures of them. I think it's cool.
They're trippy. I think I've seen them once, but then you can get online and go to a website that shows you all the different satellites, and you can see them, and they're just like daisy chaining around the world. It's wild.
Right. It's pretty neat.
But that's awesome. So if people want to follow you, what's the website? What days do you go to the Panama City Farmers Market? The
website is thelazyacres.com, and on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, it's The Lazy Acres. And so we go to the farmers market just about every Saturday.
Okay.
Now, with that said, we've had some inconsistency there. We've had graduations and we've had weddings and we've had a lot of stuff going on.
And anniversaries,
and anniversaries, and just a lot of stuff going on, life going on. And so, but typically we're at the farmers market every Saturday. We're closed here at the farm store, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and there again, most days we're open. I always encourage people, especially if you're driving up from Panama City or Tallahassee or somewhere that's a little bit of a drive, call ahead of time before you come out here.
Right. Yeah.
Normally I'm here, but like yesterday I had to run into town and had a guy call and he was like, "Hey, I'm 10 minutes from the farm store," and I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm not."
Yeah.
And so anyway, but he was cool. He sat on the front porch out there until I got here.
Yeah, enjoyed the rocking chairs out there. That's awesome. Yeah. Good little view. You get to see the dogs too. Bear and what was the other dog's name?
Bear and Wes.
Bear and Wes.
We have Marley. You didn't meet Marley.
Okay.
Marley was inside. Marley is she's the sweetest dog in the whole world. Literally. And so, but she, as the vet put it the last time she was there, she's very well conditioned. And so the heat is tough on Marley.
Oh,
so
poor
Marley's
thing. Okay.
inside the house.
There you go.
Marley's the queen. So
are they all pretty friendly whenever all the customers come up?
They are. Now, Wes tries to talk to you, and he has this like grunt and gurgle that he does, and he's done it since the day he was born. We don't know, but some people think he's growling, but he's not. He's the gentlest dog ever, but he does have this like rah 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 rah.
Just trying to say, he's very welcoming.
Yeah, he's just super sweet.
That's awesome. Well, Ryan, thanks so much for having us. It was fun to do an in-person interview actually with Allie behind the camera. So thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you guys for coming out.
Yeah. All right. Sweet.